Wednesday, so we usually start with a little cheers. So cheers, everybody.
I forgot my line.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I'll just pretend. Pretend.
Okay. All right. So this is how we're choosing to enjoy our time together. That's enough of that for now.
Yeah, it's a little warm.
Yeah, it's hard to keep those questions on. But anyway, so, but maybe we could start by asking you guys to just give a little introduction, starting with Anita, then going to Diane and Sue, a little introduction and your work on play.
Well, okay. My work on play. I'll try to condense this into a very short thing. I have been studying play for a really long time now, and for various reasons ended up developing some assessment around play, and have been involved in a series of randomized cluster trials to promote play with typically developing kids on the playground in schools, and then also in kids with autism in school.
Thanks.
Okay,
Diane?
I go now? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, play has kind of been, actually studying play and learning about it has been sort of a hobby of mine. So I haven't really done much direct research, a little bit on play, but I've participated in a lot of studies, and I'm just fascinated by how magical it is in practice. And so that's what's gotten me hooked on just the whole literature, as well as all those clinical applications that we do so often in the field of sensory integration.
Mm-hmm. Sue?
So, well, I developed the Knox preschool play scale as part of my master's thesis, and most of the research that's been done has been done by other people because they've used it, and it's amazing how it's used really throughout the world. I keep getting requests from people, can I translate it into some language? It's been translated over about 10 different languages that I can count now. And then my doctoral work, I started looking at some of the other aspects of play, including play style and playfulness and other areas. So I've been studying play for a very long time too. So, okay.
Well, thanks for joining us. We looked at a lot of questions, and I don't know if there's anything that you guys want to tackle, go for it, and we don't need to be too formal, but one of the things that I thought we might want to discuss right off the top is the meaning of play. What does play actually mean? Because I think it has different meanings to different people.
So I'm happy to jump in on that. Yeah, because like I said, I've kind of had this hobby for a long, long time. I was just reading the play literature, and I love going to the Association for the Study of Play very, very much, by the way, TASP.
Yeah.
And it's always interesting. So here are if I had to name the 3 most important defining characteristics of what makes something play, okay, here's what I would say. That it needs to be mainly intrinsically motivated, meaning that while you're doing it, you're mainly engaged in the way that you are because you really want to do that and you want to do it that way. So that intrinsic motivation is a really key part. Not that it has to be entirely the sole reason that you're doing it, but it better be a pretty big piece of it. Also, there should be some element of, this kind of goes along with the intrinsic motivation, that you're enjoying it. You might even think of it as fun, although not necessarily. Okay, so it might look to somebody else like you're working, but you're really, really enjoying what you're doing, regardless of what you label it. And then the third element I think is important is that you're having some degree of control. In most cases, you don't have total control over the situation, over what you're doing, and you might not even want it, right? Because a lot of games that are structured involve some kind of risk taking, and so you don't have control, and that's part of the fun of it. actually. So that's what I would say are the three most important elements: the intrinsic motivation, that you're enjoying it, and that there's some degree of control that you have over what you're doing while you're engaging in this play activity.
Great. Thank you, Diane. Maybe I'll send the next question towards Anita. That's okay, Suzanne? Okay. So we we had a question that is that, can you talk about the importance of play and playfulness in the development and well-being of families? And I think this question, it's always an important question, but during this time when families are spending more and unusual time together and thinking about how they're, using that time, I think it's especially relevant right now. So love your thoughts on that.
Well, I think following on from what Diane said, that because play is something you do pretty much just because you really want to do it, it's a really good indicator of who you are as a person. It really tells your family, your friends, exactly who you are. And so, I mean, I think maybe that's the most important reason to do it. I think parents are seeking ways to know who their child really is, and children likewise are seeking ways to know who their parents really are. And if you're doing a really good job playing together, I would add to Diane's list of what is it, you're really good at giving cues about how you want to be treated in play. So, and the ability to see those cues, see how someone wants to be treated, is a really important thing that families benefit from. Reading those cues and giving those cues, that's another really important benefit, I think, of play and of playing together.
Thanks. Those are some really good points. I imagine that I know the families are feeling a lot of extra stress trying to be teachers and having all this extra time with their children. So that kind of recognition of each child and who they are is so important. Did you want to ask the next question,
like
or maybe add on to that, Sue?
Yeah, I think that may be one of the good things that comes out of this quarantine that everybody is in, because it has opened doors more for parents to really be involved in their kids' activities and bored with things and wanting to do new and different kinds of things. So that may be one of the good things about this, because I think it's interesting to me, because in all the newspapers, we get to 3 newspapers a day, and in every single one of them, there have been full-page ads of the 100 kinds of things you can do with junk, and the places you can go virtually instead of really going. And I think that's wonderful, because the parents are reading more of that and getting ideas, and they're all wanting ideas of what to do and that sort of thing too. So that's what I'd like to add.
Well, as you know, families are really busy. And so what I also wonder about too is within the larger, we have a lot of different people from all over the world, and with different cultures, macro cultures, micro cultures within the family, there's different value for play. So some families might figure that that's just horsing around. Other families might feel like it's part of the fabric of the family. Do you have any ideas about that, especially as therapists are going into the home now, and the homes are different, the people are different, how they spend their time is different?
Yes. There's a lot of differences throughout the world in terms of the value of play. And as you said, some cultures, that's what the kids kind of do all day because they don't really have schooling and things. We were last year in Ethiopia, down in southern Ethiopia, where people are still living in round huts. And the kids are making their toys out of old Coke cans and stuff, but they're playing and they're having a good time doing it. And then there's also the other side, and I experienced that when I was really actively working as a therapist, of families that really want to have structure and say that play is not valued. And I think one of the things that therapists can do is to really try to help those parents see that, yes, there is value in play, and play can serve a good purpose in terms of learning and letting off steam and all of that kind of stuff. But there is lots of differences, and it really pays to get to know your families as well as treating the kids, because it's the families who have the kids all the rest of the time that you don't. And if you don't really cue into what is important for them and kind of build on that, you're not going to get anywhere in terms of therapy.
How about you, Diane or Anita? You both traveled all over the world and interacted with so many cultures. Do you have anything to add to that?
Well,
I'm looking at Anita, she's looking at me.
Play is, it does differ. The form that play takes on differs from culture to culture and differs in different age groups. But there's a lot about play that is still the same, no matter where you are. So a lot of the characteristics that Diane was listing, how you play those out, they might be different, but the characteristics remain much the same. And, I think that there's often a difference, and Sue's pointing that out as well, that the difference between valuing play for what it is and thinking you should use your time really well. I think this is an opportunity perhaps to relax the idea that you have to use every minute productively. That is, there has to be a perfect right answer to everything. And because play, one of the other really great benefits from play is you learn that there are many right answers to things, not just one right answer. And I think sometimes we get so focused on children coming up with the right answer and the right way to do it, that this is an opportunity to really realize that there are so many right answers. And of course, there are wrong answers. There are many wrong answers, but there are also many, many right answers and creative ways of solving problems.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with all of Anita's comments and Sue's as well. And I want to add on to that going back to that question about communicating with parents or people in cultures in general that perhaps don't recognize the value of play. And that certainly happens just within my own country of the United States. We have a lot of cultural diversity, and not every family values play. It can be considered a waste of time. So I think something that can be helpful, in addition to the comments we already heard, is pointing out to the parents the specific skills that the child's acquiring during play, and how important these skills will be in terms of literacy, in terms of being able to take on responsibilities, being able to be a productive worker. So it's so important in terms of the skills for life, for the entire life, that that those activities are supported. I think many people don't recognize the specific, say, motor skills as well as cognitive skills, decision making, planning, risk taking. And I know, Anita, you've done a tremendous amount of work looking into the value of risk taking and the problems of cultures. Recently, the more highly industrialized cultures have become sort of risk aversive and not wanting their children to take risks. And this is actually kind of a handicapping thing that's happening, because those children will become adults, and you need to take risks and know your boundaries as an adult. So it's an important life skill.
Yeah, I agree. And one of, I think, shared values we have coming from the work of Dr. Ayers is she said, okay, we're going to do this sensory integration intervention, and it's all going to be in the medium of play, and it's harder than it sounds. On the other hand, when you really figure out what that means, it's such an amazing format. And I think, Diane, you used the word magical, that there's a magical element in some of the sessions where the kids get fully immersed. They lose that sense of working, but rather just having that intrinsic motivation and enjoyment to do that, which then I think is generalizable. Sometimes that's a little tricky to get to get the families and the children involved, and then have that aligned with those goals. When you have special needs children and you're being asked to give therapy for specific outcomes, sometimes that's hard to see the match there.
But at the same time, I think we teach parents as therapists, we teach them that they should be using their time productively. So they should be teaching their children all the time. And I've had so many parents in the end say to me, this is such a relief. You don't know how relieved I am to hear you say to just play with my child. That, do you know how hard it is to make standing on one foot be fun?
Because it's not.
Well, it's not, and I think we are often responsible for making parents think they don't have time to play with children, and the children with whom we are working, they are children who need creative solutions to things. They are children who, more than anyone else, needs to play. But we often take it away from them because we say, well, you don't walk right, you don't talk right, you don't use your hand right, you got to do all those things, and when there's time left over, you can play. But of course, we all know that there will be no time left over. So, and we've taken away what might be the most important avenue for learning how to do what you need to do in your everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a good segue too, that a lot of our community is concerned about what to do when they have children who have difficulty with play. Children who maybe have limited imagination or language or social abilities. So we're wondering if maybe you want to tackle that and give some advice to those therapists who are trying to facilitate play for children for whom it does not come so naturally.
Well, one of the things that I think that's very important in therapy is to start where the child is and not really say, okay, these are my treatment goals and I need to start and I need to do this, that, and the other thing. But the child is not there yet. And I think it's important to kind of, recognize where the child is starting and then gradually build upon that, and helping the parents to gradually build. I know one of the questions came that parents wanted to start without, but
there she is. Okay.
Getting that idea, and also building on what the child's strengths are, because you can also start, work there and build a strength type program instead of always looking at the deficits and how far behind and what the child's can't do and that sort of thing. So those are two aspects I think that are really important to help parents along and therapists.
I think we also have to remember that the player is who decides what the play is. So we don't always have the right to decide what is play. And what does it mean to play right or to play in an age-appropriate way? Or, those two things are just almost the antithesis of one another for some children. So all children have the right to play. They have the right to engage in activity that has the characteristics that Diane was talking about. And we don't have the right to take that away from them.
Well, this kind of ties in with interests. And I just have found personally, as a therapist, how powerful it is to look at what the child wants to do. What is it that they're sort of driven to do? I guess it gets back to that intrinsic motivation thing too. But it's aligned with what their general areas of interest are. And I think a lot of times these are going to end up being very long-term interest areas. And you can build so much. You can build all kinds of skills if you tap into that and create little challenges. Just a little bit beyond what the child can already do. This is what I learned from Jean Ayres. But you're looking at what are they trying to do here? And it really takes some kind of stepping back and just really watching and observing and imagining what is the experience of the child here. One of the big messages that I learned from Jean Ayres.
Can I just say something? Because we have some questions about these times that we actually not on the therapy room with children, and we are not being the first responders to this. So we actually need to give this recommendations to parents most of the time with kids with special needs or any other difficulty. So, and sometimes I see a lot of parents trying to join play with their children, but they use it as a way to ask more things, right? So they start playing with cars and they're like, which color is this? Which color is that? What does this do? And it's just a way of demanding more things and more things. So what would be a good advice, and how can we reach parents to, help them to see that play is a valuable thing and is very important just by itself and not just a means to an end?
That's a bunch of questions. I think I'm going to take the first one. What kind of advice can we give parents? And I think a big piece of that advice is follow the child's lead. And let the child lead, so that, when you're playing cards, let the child lead, as opposed to saying, what color is that? And what's that number? And what's that? Sort of keep your mouth shut would be, I think, a big piece of advice for parents. And I'll let these other guys, because they'll have much better advice too.
I was just thinking, I can't do any better than that. That's pretty good.
Well, and I was thinking kind of the same, and I think one of the things that's been hard even for therapists is to give up that control and let the child be in control of the activity and the choice and that sort of thing, and then steer it the way, that is beneficial for the child. But that kind of, we like to be in control. I think everybody does. And to say, okay, you decide on what to do and what we're going to do, and then we'll go from there. But that's I think very important, and not an easy thing for an adult to learn. I mean, we've had workshops with people who do improv and stuff to give them exercises this is for therapists, to learn how to give up that control and let somebody else take it and then work with it. And that's hard, but can be done.
You do. You have to develop a comfort with them not being in control as the adult. And really, but if you're focusing on those observation skills and looking at what seems to be the child's intent, what is it they really enjoy doing? What are they trying to do here? And then how can I support that and insert little challenges here and there? Can I expand on it? Can I maybe simplify it or add a little challenge here or there?
I think the best father I ever heard from in a parent group that I've been working with for several weeks, and he came in one day and he said, "Do you mean that playing with her means doing what she wants to do?"
Got it. Right on. Shocking.
Yeah, I know, but it was weeks later before he finally came to that conclusion. So we have done such a good job of teaching parents about teaching their children and giving them skills to do and trying to make that teaching fun, rather than thinking, how do I play with this child? And then knowing that that child is going to have benefits from the play. Changing the focus off the benefits and onto the play, and you will get the benefits.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the big question would be how? How do you get the benefits? How? I agree with you, but I think that that's the million-dollar question, is when we are working in a playful way, then how do the kids get those learning opportunities or acquire more skills, not just in independent play, but in social interaction, social play?
A lot of it is trusting the children and building the play itself, not worrying so much about what you want the child to, what skill you want the child to show you, and worrying more about, are we all playing? And I think that's another really important message for parents and for adults, is if you are not playing, that child will not be playing. Children are really sensitive to whether you're having a good time or you're not having a good time. So if you invest yourself in creating a situation that you will love and that the child will love, you will get the benefits. You just have to trust that. It may not be the benefit, the specific benefit that you wish you were getting at the moment. It may not be, did she learn those colors, or does she know that number, or can she stand on one foot? But there will be important benefits that come out of the play itself, like the creativity and the identity of who you are, and things that we can't get in any other way.
I wonder if this time period with people being so aware of stress, and I think there's even more discussion of mental health, if this isn't a really good time to help parents understand that play is a way to reduce stress and to connect with their children on a, just a really meaningful emotional level. It may be another one of the opportunities that we have, that they might feel a little more permission. Look, you can't do it all. You can't be the parent and the teacher and be developing new skills. So use this time to connect with your child in a more relaxed way.
Mm-hmm.
And also letting children play without you, I think, is also important. Letting children play, maybe not so much by themselves, but playing with another child, playing with a sibling, without parents getting engaged in it and telling you, here's the right way to do it. Here's, don't fight, don't yell at one another, don't, because you're the parent and you feel you should have control and you should have your child behaving properly all the time. But play's not always pretty.
Very true. Very true.
That's interesting. Well, I really like the idea, your term playfulness, that you've written a lot about, that if families could infuse playfulness in all of their daily routines and activities, everybody would be having a better time.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I'll just give you an example, because when I'm lecturing, there's a slide that I have with my two little boys, and they've got a crown, and they've got their diaper, they're little people, and then they've got a cape. And I thought, when we got dressed in the morning, that was our mantra. Is like, okay, you guys get your diaper, get your shoes, get your cape, where's your crown? There were a couple of essentials, but then, what kind of adventure going on today? And every day was one of those adventures. Yeah, just as an example.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
So some of our community were asking about ideas for children with multiple disabilities, and also for older children, adolescents, and that that might also kind of lead into thinking about how to help the adults think about their own play and playfulness.
One thing I was thinking about with the older child, and the parent saying, what's age appropriate for a 17-year-old? And it's going to be different for every 17-year-old, but I would advise the parents to really look at what their peers are doing, because kids that have handicaps still want to do those same things that the peers are doing. And so if their schoolmates and things are doing a little basketball game or something like that, then take that interest and help the child so he can do it. Because to give people a list of, okay, these are things that 17-year-olds do isn't helpful. But watching what other kids of the same age or the same school, what they're doing is what your child is going to want to do. And then you can work through that way.
I want to jump in. Is this okay for me to jump in right here?
Yes.
Okay, great. This isn't specifically, older children or children with multiple disabilities per se, but I just want to point out a resource that I think is really valuable, and that is, I have to look at my notes here, it is the book by Heather Miller Kuhanek,
Yes.
Susie Spitzer, and Lisa Miller, and it's called Activity Analysis, Creativity, and Playfulness in Pediatric OT. And the thing that I think is so valuable is the DVD that comes with, and you will, if you're a person who likes to just see how this is done, it's, the video is of really high quality, and there are some examples of a couple of children with some pretty significant disabilities. So can I type this in? I will give it a try.
Yeah, you can type it into the chat box, Diane, if you have that.
I'm doing that.
Well, thank you for that resource. I know Susie Spitzer did some very nice research looking at individuals with autism and play, and kind of redefining, the view of play, basically taking their perspective rather than an external perspective. I think her work is really lovely.
Yeah. The one book that I also have next to me on the floor is the new one that's edited by Susie Spitzer and Renee Watling on autism. And it's a wonderful, wonderful reference.
And while we're throwing out references, let's not forget the Fazio and Parham reference.
Yes.
That's an excellent book, Play and OT for Children, right?
Well, thank you. I need to do a third edition, and maybe that's what I'll do on my sabbatical. Just an idea.
Yeah. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
So, and maybe while Diane's typing, we can see her typing there. I wonder about the play assessments that we have represented here from Anita and Sue. What your thoughts are on the possibility of adapting or using aspects of your assessments virtually while therapists are watching children play and working with the families through the telehealth approach.
I think it's a great idea. They're both observation scales, or observation geared, so multiple people could be watching a video of the kids playing, and I think use them both quite comfortably.
Okay, excuse me. I'm having trouble writing. I thought I typed it in, but I couldn't enter it. So.
You know what, Diane? We can share it later, but
I can do it, Diana. I will post it on the chat box. Don't worry.
Perfect, great. And somebody said hold it up, but I don't have it here with me. So
I think that was for Sue, but I will send a link from the Autism Across Lifespan again. Also, don't worry.
Okay.
Okay, but also I wanted to do the activity analysis, making play just right. That's what I was trying to enter there.
Yeah, but I'll do that. Don't worry. Don't worry.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So we're back to virtual play assessments. I think it's it's easy enough to do, and you just have to instruct the parent or whoever's playing with the child very well, so that they actually don't fall into the trap of wanting to show you every skill the child has. That it really is how you normally play with your child, or how a sibling normally. You just really want to watch the play happening without someone trying to influence the child to do something different. So if you can make that happen, I think it's a brilliant way to do play assessment.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
That's a really good idea. That's a really good idea, because some of our usual tools, like the sensory integration and praxis tests, are hard to learn, to administer. And so that's difficult to do with somebody else. But these observational tools might be more prominent now in this time period, particularly when we're doing so much telehealth, but also for the future. Maybe it gets us back into thinking more about play, those constructs of play, as a really critical developmental feature.
You know, a lot of our community has concerns about changes in the way people are spending time and use of screens. And so we had a number of questions about anything, your thoughts, or anything, any research you might know about changes in play, or, you know, related to these changes in the way children are spending time.
Well, it's especially difficult right now, considering that, at least right now in the United States, we're all confined at home, and I know a lot of places in the world have been experiencing that. Some of the first things I think of is to keep an eye on what they're watching and have activity breaks. Now, this is going to take time from adults, but you could also enlist older children to act out what they just did. Do a theater, you know, dramatize it and elaborate on it, and make props, you know, set up a little area that looks like what you saw on the screen. So that's one of the first things that I think of that could be done. One of many things that could be done.
And all this time together is an opportunity to do different things. You know, when I was a child, 1,000 years ago, we did a lot of board games and that sort of thing. And I think we've kind of lost that, but because everybody's so busy. But now suddenly everybody's not so busy. They're all there together. So it's an opportunity to try things that you know, that you remember from when you were a child. And you know, I'm a big fan also of unstructured materials and you know, playing with boxes and making forts out of things. And I think kids then learn suddenly that this stuff is really fun. Up to this point, they may have had absolutely no inkling of the kinds of things they could do because screens have just dominated their lives.
Mm.
Everything's more fun in a fort.
Yeah. Well, it's
That's a great quote, isn't it? Everything's more fun in a fort. That's a good quote.
We gotta type that down.
Yes.
Our kids might actually be getting tired of screen time too. I mean, with all of the distance education that they have to do, that they actually want a break from the screens. That's a possibility. So if there's ideas readily available, that would be great.
Yeah.
Cushions off the couch. I mean, you know, life doesn't have to be perfect. Even life can be messy. So things don't have to always be perfectly put together, and your couch cushions can live on the floor for a while. And all those boxes that Amazon is delivering to your house because you can't go out, they're great.
Don't forget
fodder.
the toilet paper rolls. We have lots of empty toilet paper rolls.
Water's great fun too.
Mm-hmm.
You can do all kinds of things with water.
Just to go back to the assessment, since we had a number of questions about assessments, I wonder, Sue and Anita, if you might each talk about your assessment just a little bit, in case there might be some people who aren't familiar with them.
Okay. Well, one of the little chat questions was, what is the reference for the assessments? And both assessments, plus some other ones, are in the Play and Occupational Therapy for Children edited by Diane Parham and Linda Fazio. And the instructions are all there. The forms are all there. You can, take them. Neither one do you have to buy a test kit for. So you can take them from there and you can try them out and use them. And I, if anybody wants to do research on mine, I always like to know, and they usually have to ask permission. But I also tell them to make sure they send me an abstract of the finished work so that I can add it to some of the other tests that have been done. And I believe Anita can speak for herself on that. But both of those are in that book, and they're there and they're available. And the preschool play assessment really goes from birth up to 6. So it doesn't cover older kids, but there are other assessments in the book that can be used with older kids. Yeah, and I'll let Anita speak on hers.
Yeah, I think they all give you some slightly different kind of information. So the Knox scale is so good at looking at the skills kids are using when they're playing, whereas my test of playfulness is more about the playfulness of the interactions that the children are having. So you could very easily have a half-hour videotape and do both things off of that half-hour videotape. And the test of playfulness will go slightly longer. I mean, we have data on kids who are from infancy, because infants amazingly play and tease and do mischief and all the things that you would never think that infants do. But so we have data on kids from very young age to about 18. So the trick, of course, is that the older children are, the less apt they are to just stay in one place while you want to watch them. So you might have to follow them around somewhere to watch them play. And, they get maybe more conscious of having people watching them. So that's another bit that you have to solve in some way. And that's a solvable problem, of course.
We did have a specific question on the name of the assessment. So it's the Knox Preschool Play Scale and the Test of Playfulness. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. And Anita, also tell them about the toes.
Okay, yeah. And there's a companion to the top called the Test of Environmental Supportiveness, which the acronym for that handily is the TOES. And it is about the environment and creating an environment or assessing an environment in terms of how well it supports the child's play. And it's set very much in what's the child trying to get from play. So what's motivating the child? And then it just looks at the common elements that have to do with play. So caregivers and playmates and objects and the environment, and how well is it supporting the child's motivations for play. So it's a very child specific way of looking at the environment.
That's so great that you're bringing up the environment, because I think that's something that has been on everyone's mind, is they're suddenly in people's homes, virtually, but looking into people's homes. I wonder if any of you have just some tips or ideas about some key things to think about with the environment for facilitating play.
Yeah, well, for me, that's what it is to first think, why is the child doing this kind of play? Or why does this kind of play give the child great joy? And then, am I, as a caregiver, how are my rules around that? Is it supporting the child to meet their motivations? If I'm playing with the child, or if the child has other playmates, how are they helping the child to get what they want to get from play? And the same thing with the objects. Are the objects available and accessible so the child can get what they want? And the space that's there, can the child, is it a space that supports what the child wants from play?
And the objects, one of the studies you did, Anita, that I just loved was when you had random objects in a I know they weren't random because you planned them, but they weren't like fixed play structures at school, and you had a tire and planks and things that the children could build with, but they weren't like prefabricated toys where they already knew what to do with them. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because maybe families have some of these random objects around, but they haven't thought of them as play affordances.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you've done a pretty good job, and it doesn't have to be anything in particular. It can be what's around that you have that, you know, will, that the child can play with. So the cushions off the couch, the boxes from Amazon, the tires that are out in the garage, you know, it's those kinds of things that you can put together and take apart and make into something brand new. So and I think that is an important piece of promoting play, is it's the objects that you use, the less they have one particular purpose, the better. So kids get, and that's, you know, we all know that kids like the boxes better than the toys after about 2 hours. And it's because the box does a lot of things, and it can be put together in a lot of different ways with other things to make play.
Well, one of the interesting questions that we got that was, are people innately playful? I mean, is this a character trait? Or I often think, well, there's a range of playfulness in the people you know. Or what do you think about that? I thought that was a very interesting question.
Well, I think it is a characteristic. I mean, you could see it in very young children, very playful, very young children. And you can also see very young children who are not very playful, who are quite concerned that things go in a particular way. But is it, the environment, I think, also has a piece of that. So you can take a very playful child and make them not very playful in an environment that demands that the child be, you know, act in a particular way. And you can take a child who's not very playful and put them in a better environment to promote that, and that child will look more playful too.
Would stress or adverse conditions interfere with play?
Oh, yeah, of course it does. But, you know, there's a lot of literature that talks about, even in war-torn societies, children will carve out opportunities and places where they can play. So children are very clever about creating play, and they will create play.
Can I just add something here? Because we're talking about the environment and how it allows or promotes play or not. And I'm seeing more and more the preschools, you know, just not allowing this play or playfulness, you know, in rolling. And do you see that as well? What are the concerns that we have to do, and what do we have to change to do in this case?
Well, I think there is sort of a, oh, sorry, Sue, go ahead.
Well, when I did my research for my PhD, I was looking at 4 and 5-year-olds in a preschool setting, and it has changed because, you know, kindergarten is now first grade, and kids are expected to know these things before they even get into school. So the emphasis has gotten more and more on the teaching and not giving kids recess or that sort of thing, and it has made a big difference. You know, the things that kids need to know now, well, we never needed to know those things. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to mention that, building on that there's a pretty impressive literature on pretend play, and specifically sociodramatic play. That's what, like, you have the toy kitchen and the children are pretending to cook and serve food. Restaurant, my daughter used to love to do that. I saved one of her little menus. I still have, because it makes me so happy to see. I just saw a comment of a participant who said, oh yeah, the kids today were pretending to wash cars. Okay, that's what they were doing. So that would be all falling under that heading of sociodramatic play, where you're acting out some scenario that you've observed the grown-ups doing a whole lot. And it turns out that a lot of engagement in sociodramatic play is highly predictive of literacy skills. So the argument in interpreting that has been, well, you have to explain, well, why is that? Why would all this pretend play contribute to children's ability to read and do math? Well, because they're having to manage that information. So for my daughter, for example, creating a menu, she has to write the things down. She has to know the script of the appropriate behaviors you would do as a server. You learn about the roles, and that contributes heavily to reading comprehension. Right? Understand just the concept of individuals playing different roles. That's an important social skill to develop, and it should develop pretty earlier. Mm-hmm. And children are sort of acting out those roles, and it's all part of internalizing the important things they need to know in order to function well and be successful in their own culture. So it'll look a little different from one culture to another, I'm sure, depending on what children are observing.
We're just about to embark on a study. We have an early childhood center at Colorado State University, which is a Reggio Emilia-based program. So it is not completely play-based, but a lot of people call it a play-based program. And the problem that they have there is that sometimes parents, when the children get to be about 4, they start getting really worried that their child will not be prepared for kindergarten because they have been spending their time playing. And so they will sometimes withdraw their children from the early childhood center there and enroll them in an academic preschool, so thinking they're preparing them better. So we're just about to embark upon following 5 children who are what we call lifers. So they started in the early childhood center when they were infants and went all the way through the early childhood center and are now ready to enter kindergarten, or will be. And so we're going to follow them through their whole kindergarten year to see what their experience of kindergarten is like, having been all the time in a play-based program. Now, we won't know how they compare, only how it's a qualitative study, and only in the way in which teachers and parents compare them to the other kids in the classroom or the other kids they know. But I think it's going to be a really interesting thing to find out how these kids cope with going into kindergarten, an academic program, which, as Sue points out, is more like first grade now. So it'll be interesting to see how they go.
Yeah, it's interesting. And, for me, it's the difference between skill acquisition and being a wholesome, well-rounded human being with a balance of work, play, leisure in your life. And I think, it's hard to get that balance just right. But I think that that's also really important to engender in those young kids, that it can't just all be work, because you'll lose the joy of living if that becomes the only thing that you do.
And I think a lot of the apparent need to do everything right and be the best at everything and to use every minute of your day to learn something. I think we're now seeing that in the university with the level of anxiety has just skyrocketed. And I think that must be a contributor to anxiety and to having to be perfect and to never being able to just muck around. And get the benefits that you get from doing things that you just love to do.
Well, and I did want to make a comment. We've got a few more minutes, but some people have asked about other methods like DIR floor time or play therapy from a psychoanalytic point of view. And we're all OTs here, and we were all mentored by Dr. Ayers and people studying with Dr. Ayers. So that's kind of the primary frame of reference, but there's a lot of people looking at play and the benefits of play from other disciplines, from an educational model or a mental health model or even a physical exercise models. So there's other people also who've done some fabulous work in this area.
Yeah.
I
And
want
I-
to
yeah.
I want
Oh,
to
go
mention
ahead.
that a resource
Yes.
that's really great online, and that's the website The Genius of Play. Okay,
Genius.
so it's thegeniusofplay.org. Let me check that. I think that's it. And yeah, the genius, THEGENIUS of play.org. And there are a lot of resources there, a lot that would be that, and it's really most of it's aimed at educating parents on the value of play, but there are a lot of ideas that OTs could use on that website.
Thanks, Diane. That's helpful.
I hope.
Another reference I thought Diane was going to mention, but the Association for the Study of Play, called TASP, is an organization of play scholars from all different disciplines, and it's wonderful. And they have conferences every year. Unfortunately, theirs was not held this year as well as AUTA, but they present papers and do research. And they have a website and also it's a listserv, but people use the listserv to like ask questions about different kinds of research and stuff. And it's going crazy right now. People who are interested in research with the isolation and the virus stuff going on. And so that's one that's really kind of an interesting one to follow as well.
Diane, it's the Association for Play or of Play?
For the study of play.
Study of Play.
Okay.
TASP.
TASP.
Yeah, I wrote the
You
link
did it?
on the
Okay.
chat. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Except I think it's missing. No, you're right. It is right.
Marco, I don't think it's not TASPLAY, is it?
No,
I don't think
it's
so.
TASP.
I think it's
TASP.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I did mention it actually.
So yeah,
Oh.
TASP, the Association for the Study of Play, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. I just copy
And
and
if you
pasted.
join,
So
which is a very reasonable rate, we get a journal every month called the International Journal of Play. And there's usually also a book that's published with some of the talks from the conference and stuff that's published every year that you get free of charge. And good organization.
Yep. Very interdisciplinary. But
Oh, very.
OTs have a presence there, which is really nice, actually.
Right.
I wanted to mention, I'm just going to, so we're almost out of time. I better not. Okay. I'm looking at Zoe and Suzanne and Marco.
Go ahead.
Just 2
Go
minutes.
ahead, Diane.
Diane, now we're curious.
I was teasing you. Okay. So,
Just
no,
playing
going
with
back to the question, I had written down this reference about playfulness being a character trait. And I know, I think Anita's research has contributed to that viewpoint, at least in children. But there is someone, I was on her dissertation committee, okay, and I just ran across randomly today an article she'd written, and it's based on her dissertation, Playfulness in Adulthood as a Personality Trait. Her name is Sharon Shen, S-H-E-N, that's her American name. And it's quantitative study. I think she used confirmatory, probably exploratory, and then I know there's confirmatory factor analysis in there. She cites Anita Bundy. She cites Sue Knox, by the way. I was very happy to be acknowledged in her paper. But here are 3 key elements of playfulness in adults, according to her research. Fun seeking. I don't know anybody like that. Just kidding, okay? Uninhibitedness. And spontaneity, or so the factors that are heavy on playfulness as a personality trait
And
in
it's
adults.
a lovely scale, which she will give you if you write to her.
Ooh.
Oh, thank
and
you.
now you need to give
Yeah,
the name,
share
Diane,
that with
because I
us,
know
too.
people will ask for it.
Okay, S-H-E-N, Sharon, S-H-A-R-O-N is the first name, and then
Sharon.
Shen, S-H-E-N. If you Google Sharon Shen playfulness adults, she'll come up.
Here I go.
Well, and that, Diane, is a great conclusion to our webinar. I think we
So
will
fun.
adapt all of these things. For us, this is fully play. It's my form of play. I enjoy being with you guys so much, and thank you.
It was
So
really
much, and
fun.
thank you
This was
for
was
to
fun.
everyone who joined us from all around the world. We're so
Thank you.
happy to have everybody.
Thank you.
That's
Thank
right.
you
Don't
all.
forget to play all those fun, uninhibited, spontaneous, enjoyable moments in life. Okay? Cheers,
Have fun,
everyone.
Thank
everyone.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so
Thank you.
much.
Bye.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Be sure and
Oh,
Cheers.
next
play.
Wednesday. Don't forget, next Wednesday, come
Oh,
wind
next
down with
Wednesday.
us with Daniel Kish.
Daniel
Oh,
Kish.
wow.
Look,
He's
Ecuador, Brazil.
he's an expert in echolocation.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Dan, yeah.
he's going to talk about multisensory perception from his point of view as a blind man who rides a bike and hikes and goes all over the world. And yeah, he's quite a fabulous individual. So join us, next Wednesday.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay, bye,
All right.
everyone.
Good.
Everybody.
Thank you. Thanks,
Bye.
Marco.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.